Yes, I think that looks good. I think so. Hello, pussycat. Yes. Probably from the sunburn. Let me start that again. Self-employment for us as HSPs is very possible and actually suits us very well. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how on earth would I get my head around doing that when I can just about make my life work in employment with all the responsibilities of my family and friends and everything else? Well, interestingly, when we get some particular pieces in place, such as the right boundaries, learning to say no, and being very honest about what we really want to do, then the process of self-employment actually becomes much easier than trying to manage circumstances in a situation that may not actually be authentic and aligned with who we really are. Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Willow here, founder of Illuminance and creator of the High Sensory Method, and I specialize in helping and supporting HSPs, high sensory people, highly sensitive people, to understand the truth of their gifts and abilities and how they can bring those into service in the world by being self-employed and by being in alignment with their purpose, which was the life path that I was thrown into. I had to figure that out. It was my challenge in life to be able to get to where I am now. In other words, it was my purpose to have to figure that out, and it's now my purpose to help other HSPs to do this. And it's interesting how that works. The piece that I just wanted to talk about here is my path of how I actually started out in self-employment and how I made that work for me as an HSP. There's a book that could be written about being self-employed as an HSP. However, what I really want to illustrate today is the importance of really being honest about who we are, what matters most to us, and getting the right circumstances and framework in place in order for us to be successful as HSPs. What I find through the work that I do is that life is really hard for us when we are not being honest about who we are and what really matters to us. And you could say that's the case about everyone, and I say this a lot, but it's particularly tough for us as HSPs because we really care about the truth. We really care about truth of self. And it's hard for us if we're on someone else's agenda and we're not being true to ourselves. This is what I find in the work that I do with my clients when people reach out to me for discovery calls. They might say that they've been in the wrong career for too long. They may be in business, but they're not feeling the flow. They're not feeling the alignment, and it really, really affects us to the point where it can, we can descend into depression if we're not being in that true state of alignment. And just before I come into these key pieces, if you're watching these videos on YouTube, or perhaps you're listening to the podcasts that I feature on, and it's getting to the point now where you're serious about wanting help and you're wanting support in taking this step, then you're most welcome to book a discovery call, which would either be with myself or one of my team. That discovery call can be an absolute breakthrough wherein we're able to actually help you to understand where your area of expertise is, what really matters to you, and how you can actually begin to put that into practice. But my invitation is only to book that discovery call if you're really serious about taking the step of self-employment. And it's a big step, and it requires sacrifice, and it requires commitment, and it's going to be a scary process. There's no other way around that. It means we're going to have to come out of our comfort zone. Success is not a comfortable process, and anyone that tells you any different either hasn't done it or they're not telling you the truth. We have to grow and evolve, and that means facing the parts of ourselves that are not truly serving us. It means letting go of the parts of ourselves that are no longer in alignment with who we are. And that means taking leaps of faith. And that means coming out of our comfort zone. And that is scary. It's scary for anybody. And it is scary for us as HSPs. But if you're at that point, and perhaps you've already been in self-employment, or you're absolutely fed up with your current circumstances and you're ready to go all in and make a change, then that's the time to book a discovery call with us. That's when we can really help to guide you and get you on track and help you to identify what really is yours and what isn't yours. And if you're not quite at that point, but you're looking for support, perhaps you're interested in finding out your purpose, and perhaps you're interested in working with the challenges that come up for us a lot around identity, where we feel like there's something wrong with us. We feel that we're constantly trying to be like other people in life in order to be successful and happy. Then that would be a good time to come into our community, which is free to join. You can come in, there's lots of resources in there, and you can start to network and you can start to get some support around these areas. And then you can gradually work through the pieces that are required to move towards being in purpose and being in alignment. And all the links to that are underneath this video. This self-employment piece, if I take you back a little bit to when I first became self-employed myself, I've always been self-employed. I have had jobs, and I have had periods of time where I've worked in jobs. It's never been for very long. I think in my 20s, I was working in a job for about 18 months once, I think. It was kind of a job. I had a franchise of a knitwear company, actually, which I really enjoyed. So I was self-employed, but I didn't create that business. Apart from that, I've always been so committed to wanting to be in control. I've always wanted to make my own money. I've always wanted to find how I can be of service in the world. And sometimes that's come from the fear of not being good enough. I'm going to be completely honest with you. The driving factor for much of my drive to want to be self-employed was that I didn't feel that I was good enough. I didn't feel that I was being seen, or that I was being acknowledged. And the way for me to be seen and acknowledged was to be a success in my own right. And again, I think that is the case for a lot of us, where we're trying to find that that self-validation through others saying, wow, you're doing really well, my goodness, how did you do that? Good for you. I think that is a driving factor for a lot of us as self-employed people. And what I discovered is that is not a very healthy driving factor to be driven by that forever. There has to come a point where we realize that that's actually a fear-based driving factor. And whilst it does help us to get things done, at the end of the day, we actually have to tune into what really matters to us and how we fit into the greater picture of evolution and the way in which we are in service as people in the world, as an individual, and the change that we're ultimately here to make. We have to get in alignment with that eventually. Otherwise, we're not making decisions from a place of truth and alignment. So that's a little bit further down the line, that piece, but it's important to be aware of what is driving us. But anyway, I have been on this path of going through, a period of self-employment. I've always been in self-employment, but the period of self-employment that really started to change everything for me was when I really began to get honest about what I really wanted to do, and very honest about what my natural skill set was. So After the credit crash in 2008, 2009, that was really the point where that was a wake-up call for me. That was where I had to start to get really honest, okay, about what is it that I really want to do now? What is the path for me that's really going to be in alignment with who I am and how I can be of service? And that it didn't begin with me just jumping into exactly what I do now. It took me time to get to where I am now. And after 2008, 2009, I was literally back to square one. I'd lost everything. It was a great reset for me. And I went from having part-time jobs whilst I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had, no money back then, and I was just scraping whatever I could together to be able to literally survive, whilst I was trying to figure out what this new path for me was going to be. And I can't emphasize the importance, especially for us as HSPs, of getting the support and the guidance that we need in terms of getting the facilitation and getting the therapy that we need, where we can actually let go of this false identity and really tune into what is actually driving us, to be able to reveal what our skill sets and abilities are. Because it's difficult to be able to see that objectively and witness that for ourselves, because we're just never given the opportunity when we're developing and growing up, where someone says, hey, your high levels of empathy and intuition and creativity allow this to happen. You're actually seeing through into the deeper fabric of life because of how you're processing more deeply in this area, and that's the area that you should be, that's where your purpose is, and that's the area that you can be in service in. We never had that conversation when we were younger. So we need to be able to have that conversation as HSPs, which is why I encourage speaking to someone who has been through that process as an HSP and figured all of that out. It took me time to figure that out for myself. So, going from, I was doing delivery driving work back in 2009, 2010, I think it was, as I was trying to figure things out. I did some sales work as I was trying to figure things out. And eventually it got to the point where I knew that I wanted to work with other HSPs, and I knew I had a calling around this truth of self bit and around this purpose piece. And I knew that higher service and the facilitation of truth and self and purpose was always right up there for me. That was, the why that makes me want to cry. It's the piece that has always mattered to me, of helping HSPs to understand the importance of who we are in the world and what the greater context of our purpose is in the world. That for me, it's just driving me from the seat of my soul. There's nothing I can do about that. It's just a fundamental part of who I am. But it took me time to figure out how to actually implement that and to actually work in alignment with that. And often what happens, and this is what happened for me, is whilst there's this underlying knowing that that's what I really wanted to do, it always feels like there's shortcuts of doing things that feel like there's going to be a faster win and making money more easily. And again, sometimes we have to do what we can, obviously with integrity, and we're genuinely, providing service in the way that we, in the way that we know we're actually helping people. But often, we're looking for a quicker win, and that's what was happening for me initially, because I came from a background in real estate and also online engineering. I love how everything works online, and I used to build websites for property developers. And before that, I was developing property myself. That's the business that I lost in 2008, 2009. And then, so initially it felt like, well, why don't I build websites for HSPs? And that was lucrative. It worked really well, and it was something that I really cared about, because I was helping HSP business owners to, get the online pieces that they needed in place to be able to bring their services into the world. And then I was supporting them to create the platform for an online course. And so essentially what I was doing was I was gradually moving towards what I really wanted to do, but there was still a part of me that didn't necessarily trust perhaps or know what it was going to look like in order for me to facilitate HSPs to find their purpose and to and to understand their natural gifts and abilities. It took time for me to do that. So going through the process of the websites, the online courses, then I thought to myself, okay, actually what I really want to do is help HSPs to get really honest about the work that they're here to do. I just want to turn there's a bell going off over there. Hopefully that's just shut that background noise down. So the websites felt important, and actually what was happening is as I was helping HSPs with their copy for the website and also for their online courses, I realized that what I really want to do is make sure that you're really being honest about who you are and what you really want to do, which was the path that I was walking. It's always the way, we're always, life always challenges us in the area that we're here to teach others in. So it was websites, that was online courses, and then I started running groups where I was facilitating HSPs because I really wanted them to get honest with themselves. And then this breakthrough happened for me around the high sensory method, where I realized that there was this core foundation that we all need to be aware of as HSPs in order to understand our purpose and understand how our high sensory gifts are designed to fulfill our purpose. And that is the foundation of the programs that we run today. And that then led me into creating the high sensory coaching program. And then from doing all of that work, it's now led me into the high sensory purpose program that we're running now. And it was only when I started to work in the arena of my natural gift of reading truth of self in others and holding the space for an HSP to be able to understand and witness their gifts and to be able to tie it all together with their life path and how that reveals the area that they're born to serve in. It was only at that point that I started to make six figures, because it was the area that I was so called to be in, but I was just not being perhaps as courageous as I could have been to actually move to that and really start to do that work straight away. So this is what I mean about the very first piece that I said at the beginning, is when we're going to be in if we're going to be in self-employment as HSPs, there's got to be some firm there's got to be some foundations in place and the right circumstances around us that we need to create in order for it to work. And it's the same for anyone going into business. But for us as HSPs, we've got to make sure we've got the right boundaries in place. We must make sure we've got the right people around us. If we've got the wrong circle of people around us who are not either ahead of us or doing the same thing that we want to be doing, and perhaps we're looking for advice from people who are not in business and who have never made money for themselves, that's not going to work. We have to, first of all, be around the right people who are doing what we're doing, and we're asking advice from people who have done what we're trying to do. We have to make sure that our family's on board, or if we can't get them on board, then we have to do what we need to do without telling them what we're doing. And I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive. How am I supposed to do that? We have to learn to give little bits of information that satisfies their curiosity whilst we are driving and pushing forwards and getting what we need to be done with the support of the people around us who have our best interests at heart. Because sometimes our family, and I say this with love and compassion, they don't have our best interests at heart, because it's either challenging for them, because then they might think in their hearts, okay, well, if you go off and be really successful, am I going to lose you? Does it mean that I'm going to have to face all of my fears and go and be very successful? With the best intentions in the world, sometimes at the closest people around us are not going to have our best interests at heart. And we have to work how we manage that. We have to make sure that we are looking after our needs as well as their needs, and making sure that we are creating the right circumstances to get to where we need to be. So those types of boundaries are important. We have to learn how to say no when it comes to our time. This is hugely important. And the key piece is that we've got to be really honest about what we really want to do and what we know we are naturally gifted at. And we have to trust that that is what will carry us through. Because let me tell you, it's much easier to go straight to the piece that you know you're naturally good at, even though that might be the scariest jump, because life is going to flow through you much more easily. The universe is going to support that movement into the work that you're really here to do. Now, it's not to say that, the steps that I made beforehand haven't been useful. The online work that we do is still a very, very important part of the work that we do at Illuminance. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to go for this self-employment piece, take the time to figure out where your natural skill set and abilities are and get into that arena and start to get practice and feedback from the world and from your ideal clients, from the people that you're going to serve, no matter what that product or service is. So you can start to see how naturally gifted you are. And then you'll start to get the right feedback and the right response from people. And that is where the money will start to come, and that's where the confidence will start to come. And you can live the life that I believe as HSPs that we really crave, which is where we are in control of our lives and that we are living in alignment with our truth and what really matters to us. And we have reduced all of that background noise and responsibility and expectation that's on us that is not doing us any good and is actually holding us back. So there are sacrifices that have to be made, and we've got to be really honest about the parts of our lives that are serving us and the parts that aren't. And that is not an easy step. But as I was saying just now, or perhaps in the last video I was saying this, is if the pain of not changing is becoming unbearable for you and you're ready to face the pain of changing, then that's the time to reach out to us, as an example, because this is exactly the work that we do, or to start to get the support around you from someone that you know and trust who can help and support you on this journey into living this kind of life where I travel all over the world, doing what I love and working with the people that I love and having the time of my life, quite frankly. And that did take time, work and sacrifice, but my goodness me, the pain of not doing that was unbearable for me. And that's what drove me to where I am today. And also the drive of the work that I know that I'm here to do. It was a combination of two of those things. And that has allowed me to get to where I am. Thank you for listening. I hope this is helpful. The links for the support that you need are below, or please do take the steps to get among the people that have your best interests at heart. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.